Thank you, band. You may be seated. Yes, we give our love to our wonderful God. Speaking of wonderful, today my sermon title is Wonderfully Made. Yeah. Aren't we all? We are. Yeah, indeed we are. If you could actually just refresh the page, I updated it a little bit. Yeah, I want to thank Lanyang for her testimony and for actually taking that trip on her own to serve. That's not something that's easy to do, right? Just, you make the decision one day and you're like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go and serve the world, and whatever happens, happens, right? Just giving to the world. And I was thinking of, myself, like, I enjoy traveling. Like, those were really beautiful pictures. I want to go to Mongolia someday. And normally, when I think of traveling, I don't think of going on my own. I have to have somebody at least, because my biggest fear is getting lost. Imagine getting lost in a foreign country, and then Lanyang decides to just go. I mean, of course, she had her friends, but yeah, thank you, Lanyang, for sharing and for just serving in the Mongolian community. Today my sermon title is Wonderfully Made. Actually, it's good to be back after a month, right? Augustine and I went to Kenya. The original plan was just a 2-week kind of vacation and time to recharge, and then we ended up being there for a month. But we made it worth it. And we got to connect with we connected with some of the Kenyan members, as well as just integrating with the community as well. This time we didn't get to do a safari because we did it last time, and the first couple of weeks it was raining heavily, so there was a lot of floods, and it was bad to the extent where the public transportation buses were falling, or because the rainwater was just so heavy. But eventually the government took care of it, and a few days or so later everything kind of dried down. But we were okay where we were located. On the topic of wonderfully made, I was wondering what to talk about actually for some time this whole week. There are a lot of there's so much you can, share about, but I felt that God is really important to me and to us in general, an important part of our being, and I wanted to just start with, actually, I was reminded of True Father sharing about how God created us Adam and Eve. So God created, this speech I read, Father said, he created man. And then when creating woman, he realized there were differences that he didn't want, woman to have. For example, after when man started growing, right, a beard started growing, right? Hair, facial hair, chest hair, and God was like, no, I don't want her to have that. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating. The Father didn't say it like that, or maybe God didn't say it like that, but, it was interesting. And then for man, the muscles started to pop out, right? And when God created woman, he noticed, I don't want that on her. She will be delicate and soft, because man's body was a little on the rougher side, I'm not saying anything, but woman being more delicate and with softer skin, longer hair, right? God took the time, of course, with the man in the beginning, and then noticed, I want woman to look completely different, right? And then also took the time creating woman. And then you can see the differences between, the two, right? Man with different facial features, stronger facial, characters, and woman with a softer looking, facial features, softer smile. There are men with soft smiles, but, you could clearly see the difference. And so I like that story because it makes creation more fun in my head. But also there's truth to it too. And there was a time, actually, we had a workshop here in February, and someone asked, why doesn't God reveal himself? How do we know of God's existence? Why doesn't God do something to show that he's present? And, I was curious because my immediate thought on that is like, what does God showing himself look like? I was thinking of like chaos, like floods and, all that. So I asked the brother this question. I was like, when you say revealing, God revealing himself, what do you mean? And he, exactly what I was thinking, the chaos, the rapture and floods and, all these dragons, fire and stuff, right? And then we would be like, oh my gosh, that's God, right? That would be so cool, right? But when you think about it, how terrible is that? Imagine if there's chaos around the world, right? Just because God wants to prove his existence, right? There's floods, people dying, your family members are dying, everybody's trying to save themselves. Can't get toilet paper because it's so expensive, or we ran out, or all of that. It's like, who wants that kind of chaos, right? And I realized that was the animated version or the entertainment version of what God is pictured as, right? God of chaos, God of this. To me, it feels like this evil kind of God trying to expose or prove that I am almighty and all-powerful. And with that, I realized, or you come to realize that God is always revealing himself or herself in our lives through the people we interact with, our friends, our family members, our spouses, and even ourselves. You realize that God is always revealing himself to us, even through thought. Sometimes you have this thought and you're like, that doesn't sound like me, right? And for sure, at least me, I'm like, yeah, that's not something I would say. And it's like, okay, God, I hear you, I hear what you're saying. But God definitely reveals himself to us every single day. And the major question is, where is God? This is something I'd been struggling with growing up, connecting with God as this being outside of me. It's as if I was looking for something, looking for someone, right? But then, as I grew older and learning from true parents' words, and even Jesus' words, you realize or you learn that God is actually within you. There's no need to search out there. Yesterday, my husband and I were watching. Has anyone watched The Chosen? The Chosen, Jesus' story, right? Yeah, it's a really good series of Jesus. Only got to 2 episodes, I think. That was 3 years ago. Because this actor who acted as Jesus portrayed Jesus' heart so well that it was so deep that I couldn't go on. I was just so moved by it. And I was like, I don't know how to get past this portrayal of Jesus' heart. But I'll definitely get into it again. But we were watching a certain scene of Jesus meeting the Samaritan woman at the well. And At first, she completely was disinterested in talking to Jesus. Jesus just started talking to her, and she was disinterested and was questioning him. And later, Jesus started to basically tell her who she is, like what she's done. Jesus knew who she was, and she was really thrown off by that. She was surprised that Jesus knew everything about her. And one thing she said was she felt unworthy, and that at that time, women weren't even allowed, especially a Samaritan woman, wasn't allowed to pray at a temple. And so she was like, how am I even going to thank God if I can't even go pray at the temple? And Jesus said, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to change that. He said, God is spirit. It won't matter where you worship, only that you do it in spirit and truth, heart and mind. That is the kind of worshiper God is looking for. God is not looking for us to go. I mean, we have our own safe places, right? We have safe places where we want to connect with God, whether it's church, temples, or Chonchimwan. We have these places where we feel safe connecting with God. But what is being said here is that that is not the only place where you can connect with God, because God is spirit. God is more than just that place. God is bigger than this room where you come feel safe to pray, right? Or bigger than the Chonchimwan where you feel safe to pray. God is spirit, and when you connect with God in spirit and truth, which are also words Mother repeated, right? She said she wants us to go back to the early church of connecting with spirit and truth, right? And so, yeah, what actually stood out to me was what he said, which is heart and mind. So there's spirit and truth, which is heart and mind, right? It's your heart. You pray and connect with God within your heart, with your heart, not out there. Whatever you're looking for is not out there. The God you're looking for is not out there. It's within you. God is in your heart, in your mind. And that is what God is looking for. Yeah, so the location you pray, and this was what Jesus was telling her, you can pray in the mountains. You don't have to go to the temple. You can pray in the mountains, connect with God in the mountains. And just like us here, we don't have to limit ourselves by focusing on one specific place. Like, for example, a lot of us get into the routine of, I know Sunday I'm coming to church, that's when I'll connect with God, right? That's how I used to think. I grew up thinking only Sundays is when I have to, intentionally dress up really well and go to church and meet with people, listen to the message, right? And that's how we get used to, or these are the habits that we form going to church, right? But then it's not just about that. You can do it at any time, any place, right? You don't have to be in one building. You can do it, even with our culture or tradition of doing hundake, not just at 6 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m., 7 a.m., those who do it at 5 a.m., but you can connect with God at any time, any place. Talk to God, communicate with God. You don't have to bow down and close your eyes in the middle of the street because you want to connect with God. You can have this moment of praying to God or having a conversation with God just randomly as you're walking on the street. Most of the time, nobody cares if you're talking to yourself. You're just that crazy person. It's okay, right? But you can silently talk to God in your heart. It doesn't have to be out loud. It's like, even just reporting to God, telling God, I'm having this really wonderful day today. This and that happened. I met this person from 30 years ago and, just had a good chat and, this and that. And, it just having a nice conversation with God. It doesn't have to be like You go down on your knees praying and, thank you for this beautiful day and adieu, But it can be more than that. So, it didn't update. In Father's words, in the Chansonggyeong, it said, Father asked, where is the kingdom of heaven? It is not in the air or somewhere far away. It's realized in your heart when you become one with God. Again, your heart. That's the key word. It's not out there. It's within you. Even Jesus said that. The kingdom of heaven is within you in Luke 17:21. And I think it's like we know this, but then it's so easy to get distracted by everything that happens around us. There's a time where I challenged God. I said, I don't need church. I am not going to church. I am not going to do hunduke. I'm not going to do anything. And, the routine, right? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to prove that I don't need to go somewhere or do something a certain way to connect with you. And I tried that for about 3 months, right? In the first month, I was okay, having conversations with God. In month 2, and I was working for the church at that time, right? And then month 2, I got busy. Month 3, I got busy. And then in month 3, I was like, wait, it feels like it's been so long since I talked to God or had this connection with God. Even though I was working for the church, you're surrounded by all this information, but that doesn't mean you're communicating with God or having a relationship with God. You're just doing this repeated task over and over again, things you need to do in order to get things done. But connection with God, the heart, is a very intentional process. It's not just, I do this and it's done and I'm good for the day, but it's very intentional. You choose to connect with God at this moment, right? I'm having a moment of connecting with God. Even as you drive, it's like, oh, wow, God, that was a really fast car. I hope that guy is safe. Protect him. That's a moment, an intentional moment. And Mother said, when your heart becomes the dwelling place of God, your life itself becomes the kingdom of heaven. So if your heart becomes this dwelling place, this space that you create for God intentionally, then your life itself is the kingdom of heaven. You create the kingdom of heaven within you, and then you multiply that to your family and your friends and society, right? And eventually the nation, and that's what we're here trying to do. Right? This is something that we've been trying to do, and it starts with us creating a space for God within us in order for it to multiply to our families, our nations, and the world. And so just a few tips to conclude. Oh, there. Yeah, these are a few tips from Eunmi on how connecting with God connecting with God within you at any time. So whether it's through loud prayer, if you want to pray out loud, that works for you, that's okay. God is hearing you all the time. And silent or heart prayer, artistic prayer, silent prayer, that's also a way to connect with God. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be at a specific time. It can be at any time and within your heart. And talking is also a method of connecting to God. Sharing your day, your worries, your doubts, and expressing gratitude for the little things that you have in life. That's also a way of connecting with God intentionally, right? You recognize how God worked in your life, and you thank God for this thing, whether it's little or however small or grand it is. You still thank God because you recognized how God worked in your life. Yeah, and the challenge for the week is, aside from your daily habits or routines, how do you want to deepen your relationship with God this week? How do you want to deepen your relationship with God this week? I wish you all a blessed week, and yeah, thank you for being with us today.